Good evening, everybody. Good evening to people joining us on the Town Council YouTube channel. We'll sort of make an official statement before the start of the meeting that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Biddulph Town Council YouTube page. The aim is that decision-making should be transparent and in the public domain, which will involve more of our community and local democracy. By being in this council chamber, you are consented to be being recorded and for your image to be added to YouTube. The images and sound may be used for training purposes. Any views expressed are the speaker's own and do not necessarily reflect the view of Biddulph Town Council. Please view the guidance on recording in public meetings policy if you need more information. Thank you. Oh, welcome to the Planning Committee meeting, Tuesday, the 18th of June, 2024. Item 10, apologies.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Hawley's apologies, and his substitute this evening is Councillor Rogers, Councillor Hopkins and Councillor Holdsworth also sent apologies, but with no substitutes. Thank you very much. So, declarations of interest. Do we have any disclosable pecuniary interest in dispensations to be declared? Anybody? Councillor Smith.
The first item for discussion, the first planning application, I won't be voting or passing comment as I know the applicant.
Okay, but that's another interest rather than a pecuniary interest?
Other interest.
Okay, so another interest I need to declare on the fourth item on the planning, which is the, find it, 246, Mr. and Mrs. Howard Overy. I know them. I've made comments and recommendations, but I will not be voting. I'll be abstaining from the vote on that. Thank you. So, to approve the minutes from the Planning Committee held on Tuesday, the 21st of May, 2024. These have been through the approved at Town Council. So can we accept those? Are we happy to accept me to sign those? Can I have a quick show of hands, please? Thank you very much. Please bear with me for 30 seconds while I sign all the appropriate pages. It's thick paper. It is, isn't it? Really? Yeah. The 18th. Duly signed, thank you. Okay. Item 13. It's a standing agenda item to consider any proposed sites for local listing. Do you have any sites?
No, nothing new.
Councillor Smith.
Just to bring it back to the floor about the Morris Homes land and possibly exploring whether or not, with the ongoing issues that have been happening recently, whether it might be an ideal time to look at whether we'd be able to take that parcel of land on as Town Council.
Right, okay, I think that's a different item, isn't it? But rather for local listing, but I think
Jackson's fault.
Councillor Jackson, what can we say? Okay, I think it's a very good point, and I think we should bear that in mind in terms of.
Shall we add that to the agenda for recreation and minutes?
I think that would probably be a good plan. Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Okay, right. So moving on, no other items. Item 14, to receive an update on Biddulph planning applications where there's been a reference to the Neighbourhood Plan. You should all have been circulated the somewhat weighty document with the green headings. Madam Chief Officer.
Thank you. I'm giving you this really not for you to study in any great detail because you have seen all these planning applications before, but just to emphasise to you the lack of mention of the Neighbourhood Plan in any of these planning decisions. I think there is one in all of the planning decisions that have taken place since January this year when the Neighbourhood Plan was made. There has been one mention. There have been two mentions to the Biddulph Area Strategy, which I think is a defunct document now, but no mention to the Neighbourhood Plan. So we had a look at this following the training that we did with Urban Vision. Whatever that was, February time, perhaps, was it?
Yes.
And Hannah at that time had already had a look at this for the first couple of months of the year and suggested that we needed to write to the District Council to emphasise the issue. So I've think it's probably an appropriate time now. We're sort of 6 months in to say that we've undertaken this work. We are disappointed at the lack of at least mention of a
Yes.
neighbourhood plan within their decision making.
I would be happy to propose that the chief officer writes on behalf of the planning committee as well, the neighbourhood plan, to express our disappointment, I think is the word.
Yeah.
We're not angry, we're just very disappointed in the lack of reference to the plan. And you'd be happy to second that as a proposal? Thank you, Councillor Salt. We have a quick show of hands, please.
Question, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Jackson.
What is the legal requirement of the planning authority to actually mention it? I mean, have they got a legal binding? They have got to consult, and obviously then from this, they have not been consulting the neighbourhood plan when they have been determining their applications.
Yeah.
That's the reason for highlighting.
They have not referenced that they may well have looked at it, but they haven't referenced that they've looked at it. And therefore, as far as the world is concerned, they haven't looked at it. And there's a legal obligation as the most recent planning document that's been issued and been approved that they should do that. It takes precedence, I think, even over the SMDC local plan as being the most recent document.
Well, it is the most recent. I mean, I'm not sure there's a kind of precedent necessarily, but it's the most recent planning document and it is a part of planning policy and should be considered with regards to every application.
Okay. Councillor Salt.
It's Councillor Jones first.
Okay, sorry.
Chair.
Okay, I saw your hand before his hand, but
No, I was just going to say, Chair, yes, we should write, but I think you as chair of this planning committee now and being on district council,
Yeah.
we're justified in raising a question. The next full council to the portfolio holder to ask them what's going on.
that's the
Council.
yes, I think that's that. Yeah, so in that case, that there's action. I think that you're amending the proposal to say that not only should you officer right.
No, I think we should write.
Yes, but
I'm just
in addition to that,
to you to ask the chair of this committee.
yes,
I think a member of district
yes,
council.
I think that's very appropriate. Yes, so if we take that as effective as an amendment to the proposal, do we have both chief officer right and that also as the chair of planning, I should raise it. You're happy to second that as well. Thank you. Can we have a show of hands then, please? Thank you. Or do you have another point?
Yeah, I just want to say, so what is the point of recourse then? Because obviously that could work in favour of potentially an applicant, but not in favour of Biddulph Town Council. So what is the recourse aside from writing and expressing our dissatisfaction? Could we, if you chose to, legally challenge that?
Could challenge a decision based on that. Yeah.
If for example, we have made a recommendation for approval and they've refused, but they haven't referenced the plan, or similarly, if we recommended refusal and they'd approved, then we could actually raise a technically legal objection to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Chief Officer. Okay, right. So moving on to item 15, planning applications. I'll go through them in the order in which they are in the agenda. You've all received my, I hope you, summary overview. So starting with 0060, this is essentially a listed building consent for a full roof overhaul due to roof spreading, to correct the roof spreading. It's a like-for-like replacement. It's currently tiled with Staffordshire blue tiles, and the objective is to reuse the existing tiles and roofing materials wherever possible, and any new materials will be on a like-for-like basis. Essentially, you can see from the pictures that the roof line's sagging and they're having problems with the roof spread, the impact on the walls. And it's effectively, it should look the same when it's complete. It's just bringing the building back into a safe condition to be used. It is a working farm and it's being stated as being brought back into use for agricultural purposes. There was a response from Historic England, but it was completely neutral, saying neither one thing nor the other. So in terms of our neighbourhood plan policies, I believe it complies with HCT1 enterprise and tourism, as it's effectively developing a existing agricultural business, allowing it to expand slightly. I think that's the only neighbourhood plan policy that it impacts. It is in the green belt. It isn't applicable for biodiversity net gain, as it's a householder application and they're exempted. So my proposal on this or recommendation will be we approve it with the condition that they specifically state that the materials used must be effectively exact replacement, exact like-for-like replacement for any replaced tiles. Because it's in the green belt, we want to maintain the state of the building. The comment, the fact that it's essentially repairs, it will bring it back into safe use. So that would be a suggestion, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, doesn't the application say that it will be to match, materials will be to match?
They do say materials will be matched, but I think
Basically, you're saying as long as it adheres to the planning application, it's.
yeah, but
I think, if I may, Chair, I think the only I think it's only because it's a listed building, isn't it? That they need any permission. Had it been a non-listed building, this would count as repair work.
yes.
And they wouldn't have needed any permission. So it's only because it's a listed building. So as far as I can see, Chair, we should put it through NAC.
Right, okay. Another comment there. Anyone else want to add anything to that?
I'll second it.
All I would say is that I think rather than no adverse comments, either we approve it or we recommend approval, recommend refusal, or recommend approval with conditions.
So if I may, Chair, the protocol in this committee over the years I've been on it is to say make comment or no comment. And if we have no comments, it's NAC. It's only recently we've started recommending approval or we can recommend refusal, but I think we can't. It's pointless for us to recommend approval. We put it through no comments. We are a consultee, not a decision-making body. So again, I would propose to put it through NAC.
Okay, so do we have someone wants to second that? Councillor Salt. Okay, can I show of hands, please? All those in favour? Okay, right. Thank you. So that's going through with no adverse comments. Right, moving on to 238, One Church Mews, Knipersley. It's the proposed garage conversion to provide a bedroom for disability needs and provision of one additional parking space to replace the converted garage. So it's a conversion of existing garage. It's one of the newer buildings on the estate there, I believe. Effectively to facilitate accessible accommodation, as I say, replacing the lost car parking facility of the garage with an additional parking space. Materials to match existing red brick, grey UPVC windows. So it's conversion of an inbuilt garage into an accessible bedroom. The design treatment from the pictures will match the existing rear of the property, because it is actually at the back. No supporting statement. It's not in the green belt. It doesn't need BNG, and the only possible policy impacts on it is public realm car parking and movement, and they're replacing the lost car parking space with another. Therefore, that's a neutral, I would suggest. So recommendation, either approval or no adverse comments, because we're creating an accessible facility. I've got Councillor Rogers and then Councillor Salt. Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, Chair, I would take it as making no obstacles. It's a very tight site, that is, at the moment. They said this additional parking not going to affect any of the neighbours, is it?
I think this is the original larger property. I think that's on the corner of the site.
Okay, I know it's a bit tight space on.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to throw that up on the screen, please?
Yeah. The original larger property is actually,
That one right at the very back.
you flip on the other side, but
Okay, right.
this one does stand absolutely well alone.
Yes.
It's a similar kind of.
Yeah. So I thought when I was looking at the design, it looked like one of the newer properties, but it was seemed to be on a much bigger plot. So, okay. So you think, yeah, the one at the back is the original. So looking at that.
The angle of the triangle is,
Yeah.
is the original dormer bungalow.
Yeah. I'm not sure that's a major issue.
I'm just making sure it isn't, that's all.
Right. Councillor Salt.
My only comment would be sustainable drainage, because you're effectively going to be concreting, aren't you? So.
That's an interesting point. Yes, as long as the additional parking space is sustainable drainage.
Yeah. That'd be my only comment to make.
Okay.
Which fits in with the neighbour.
Yep. You, so in that case, are you suggesting that we should actually recommend a condition that sustainable drainage
Yeah.
for the new location?
For the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a point as well, councillor Yates?
First, yeah, I mean, sustainable drainage regulations are the building regs, you know,
Yeah.
you're basically recommending that they ensure that building regs are actually followed.
Yes.
You know, so in some respects, you shouldn't have to do that, but there's still an awful lot of drives being put down which aren't sustainable drainage, because I don't think people are aware that that new regulation is in.
Okay, and that also, as councillor Salt does, that picks up on Inf 2, doesn't it? Sustainable drainage in the neighbourhood plan.
Yeah.
So, okay, can we make that amendment? So we're referencing Inf 2 sustainable drainage. And are we happy to put this through with a approved subject to the condition of sustainable drainage? Yep. So I've got a proposal essentially from councillor Salt. A second from that. Did you put your hand up for that?
Second it.
Okay, thank you. So all in favour? Okay, right, thank you. Right. Moving on to the first slightly contentious development. Right, can we pull up the image of the property for this? Okay, right. So this is an application by either Mr. or Miss Island. There was no title given on it. 17 Oxhay Drive, Biddulph. It's a proposed development is to a hip to gable conversion with a rear dormer and a proposed front porch. No pre-application advice. The roof line is going to be extended from the current hip design to the gable end, with a new gable built to the full roof height. A rear dormer across the full width above the, that says exiting, above the existing roof apex for the dormer conversion. And the front porch is an additional 2.1 metres of front porch in front of the existing building line. The walls will be rendered, the roof tiled, grey UPVC windows to match. The dormer will, of course, be a flat roof. Okay. The extra proposed bedroom would be formed by the hip to gable roof and the rear dormer. The existing roof height would not achieve the headroom, and therefore proposed that the dormer flat roof is raised above the existing ridge height. The supporting statement in argument of doing that is that it's the only cost-effective solution, because otherwise they'd have to drop the interior floors and that would not be cost-effective. It's not in the green belt. It doesn't have BNG applicable. I would suggest that this is impacted by Neighbourhood Plan Policy DES 1 for design. Right.
So you've got an email.
Yes, I would say. While this wasn't on the website, we have actually had a comment from a local resident. Okay, and the comments are that the proposal represents a clear change of character to the property and the removal of the hip roof feature. The roof line and street scene on this row of traditional semi-detached houses can clearly be read as a consistent style of design and forms part of the character of the neighbourhood. Other extensions along the road residents have been sympathetic to the hip roof design and have retained the feature, as well as reflecting in extensions previously delivered to the neighbouring properties. Proposed flat roof addition extends above the roof line and is entirely inappropriate to the principle of design in this location and to the detriment of the overall setting. It may be considered that this demonstrates overdevelopment of the property if this is the only potential design solution available. Whilst there is not an objection in principle to the extension, the changes to the properties along this row, it should be consideration that the character cannot materially be dismissed and eroded by unsympathetic design and developments. In future rows of character properties such as this will be considered as historic and attractive features within the residential mix, and therefore consideration for respectful development is incumbent upon all of us. I'll come to you in a moment, councillor Yates. What the member of the public, the objections there reflect, I think, my comments on this, that there are two parts to the development here. There's the front porch, which is extending quite considerably in front of the building line. However, there are a number of other properties that have similar extensions on the front. However, the roof dormer design is not consistent with the surrounding properties. It changes the pitch of the roof, creates an obstructive structure in the skyline, and I don't think it complies with the DES 1 requirements for sympathetic design. So you can see what they've done there. Can we look at the either
Street view.
before or the street? I think the street view is probably appropriate if we can on maps, please. And I think you'll see quite clearly the point that I think I was referencing, and certainly the objector to this was referencing. When I initially read it, I wasn't entirely certain what it meant by the hip, but then once you see once you see the building in situ, you can see quite clearly. Okay, so we see the building now. The roof shape where effectively it's sloping from the gable end up towards the chimney, that will be squared off with a large flat roofed dormer extension to the back, which is raised above the line of the current roof apex pitch. Councillor Yates.
I agree with everything which was written in that letter, to be perfectly honest. I mean, when I saw that, I mean, it would be out of character, and it would, you know, the visual impact would be quite high. The actual, I would call it a Manson extension at the back. It reminds me of what you see when you go into London on the last few miles of the train, and you see every house has got. And it's usually indicative of the fact that there just isn't available property in the area, and they're having to do something with their own property because they can't either priced out or whatever. I think, you know, as much as I sympathise to the fact that they want to create another bedroom, I think there is an obvious solution to creating another bedroom without actually spoiling the landscape, and that would be to actually put a double-storey extension on the single-storey extension at the back.
Yes.
And you could carry the hip through on the side and actually put a gable on the other side, and that would look absolutely brilliant, and it wouldn't have half the engineering problems or the visual aspect problems of this. So I really would support absolutely that neighbour's comment.
Yes. My recommendation on this was that we should refuse it on grounds that it's not appropriate design for the location.
Or department.
Okay, so that would be the proposal. Do I have a seconder for that?
Just a quick,
Yes, councillor.
the letter, is there an address on the letter?
I was trying to find if there was an address on the letter. Is it,
It's written, but
I don't, well, I think it's effectively anonymised, isn't it, by it's coming from a business management account. But, oh, I said no, it is. Yeah, we do have it named, and it's someone who's from off Mow Lane on Biddulph. Yeah.
So I sometimes wonder whether some of these objections, if they're not directly going to be upset by it, that how much weight do you throw onto an objection for somebody that's living a considerable way away?
I would counter that and say I would actually give less maybe give less consideration for someone who's objecting to something that's on their backyard than someone who's fundamentally objecting on the grounds of design. And I think their concerns are legitimate in terms of effectively adversely impacting the appearance of the that area, that all the properties upon that street have that similar double pitched
Just
design.
wonder why.
Me to wonder why. I think we're not objecting because we don't like the look of it. I think we're objecting because it contravenes the design requirements of the neighbourhood plan to maintain. If I can find the appropriate. Right. Yeah, so DES 1, which is the requirement of the neighbourhood plan, is it complement the existing character and townscape in terms of scale and massing. So I don't think it does complement the existing character. I think that's essentially it. So design access statements, submitted planning application should make clear how the requirements of the policy have been met. And I don't think they've met the requirements of the neighbourhood plan policy in terms of the design of the building. So on those grounds, I say I would recommend refusal. Councillor Jones?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with what you said and what Councillor Yates said. What I would suggest maybe is when we put our objection through, that you make the reference, the paragraph reference to the Biddulph neighbourhood plan. Maybe
Absolutely.
the office and read the damn thing.
Yes, 100%. I think, particularly now in the light of the fact that we have the neighbourhood plan and it's not being considered, anything we put forward either in terms of, usually in terms of refusal or recommending refusal, should be grounded on the references. So I propose that. Do we have a second for that? Okay, thank you, councillor Jones. Can we have a show of hands, all those in favour? The recommendation is to refuse on the grounds that it doesn't comply with the neighbourhood plan policy DS1.
Yeah,
Design-
councillor Smith abstained.
Did you, councillor Smith, abstain? Okay, right. So, no, anyone voting against before I check, finish off? And councillor Smith abstaining. Okay, right. So essentially is not being out of character.
Yeah.
Everything that I think the gentleman concerned reference. Okay, right.
Councillor Yates's suggestion was, that's the ideal solution. Like it,
Yeah.
pretty real extension.
I think when you look at the plans, yes, that would be an appropriate solution. I can imagine it's probably a significantly more expensive solution.
Okay.
But that would then comply with the design statement of DES 1.
I think, Chair, it will make it a much more valuable house, having something which is designed properly and scaled
Oh,
properly.
aesthetic.
Yes, absolutely, because the space that they're taking out to allow the stairs to go up
Yeah.
would be through room. Okay, which gives me more. Okay, so I don't think it's our position to make alternative proposals, though, is it not?
No.
Right,
Just making a
okay,
decision.
so any decision. Right. Moving on to SND 0246, Mr. and Mrs. Howard Overy, Birches Tree Farm, Elias's Lane, Biddulph Moor. It's a proposed first floor extension to create a bathroom, proposed plant room extension to the rear, and a proposed single-storey side extension. There was no pre-application advice. The proposal essentially is a ground floor side extension to create a large open plan seating area, with a first floor extension to create bathroom facilities that are currently none in the property. Within the property. Materials: natural stone, plain tiles, timber window frames. The proposal is to match the existing stone and tiles, with the windows, timber effect sliding sash windows. The design statement, in terms of supporting it, the single ground floor extension is about a 50% footprint increase, with the stone to match the existing building. The first floor extension is actually a relatively small area, probably about 15% of the floor extension, to turn a store area into create a family bathroom and a guest ensuite guest room. The guest room. So essentially, in terms of total area, while the side extension is quite large, the overall change to the building's footprint is probably around 25%. So, okay, there is no supporting statement included. I don't think it's in the green belt. We need to be aware of. It's not a BNG applicable site because there's a household application. I don't believe, because it's not a working farm, I don't believe it impacts on any of the neighbourhood plan policies. The recommendation from this, I would suggest, again, would be to approve it with suggested conditions, possibly to restrict or remove the permitted development rights, because it's in the green belt. We wouldn't want to see further, perhaps, development without planning permission sought. And the materials and construction and design should be as specified, should match the existing building, again, because while it's not a listed building, it has I think reasonable historic character within the village. Councillor Jones, looking to you as
Yes, Chair, I didn't realise it was written Howard.
yeah, that's
I will declare an interest.
Yes.
Vote or speak.
yes. Okay, so while the application for the site's in the green belt, it's an existing dwelling and is in a semi-derelict state. It'll bring a semi-derelict building back into use, which, while not specifically applying to a neighbourhood plan policy, it is within the broad context, consistent with the neighbourhood plan objectives of returning derelict, semi-derelict buildings back into use rather than seeing them further decay. As I say, I would also suggest that we refer this one and the last one also to the neighbourhood plan working group, bearing in mind that we're specifying references to the neighbourhood plan for future reference. I think I've neglected to say that same for the previous one as we were. Okay, right. So I'm not going to make any further comment and summarise what we've got in front of us. Anybody want to make any comments or make any observations?
Yes, yeah, thank you. Just to say, it's derelict. I don't think it was derelict. I think it was occupied until about 2 years.
I said semi, I think it's semi-derelict, it's used.
And all the water was getting into it. It was just unoccupied.
Yeah, it was unoccupied and,
Just repair on.
yes.
Just
Okay, thank you, thank you. I did specify semi-derelict, I think, which was hedging the beds.
Attached.
Yeah, but it's the fact that it has no inside bathroom and the like, it's just.
Yeah, it's dated. It's.
Yes.
Recent date.
Right. So, as I say, because I know the couple involved, I won't vote on it. But the suggestion was that we should approve it with those conditions. Anybody want to make any commenting? Does anybody want to propose that? We go for, yes, councillor.
Those those conditions that it's accepted, yeah, but and no one myself, to be fair, but yeah.
Okay, do you have anyone second that? Thank you, councillor Yates. Can we have a show of hands, please? Anyone against? Abstentions? Let the record show. Councillor Jones and myself abstained. Right. And again, I think, do we need to reference on that in our response that it's consistent with the overarching philosophy of the neighbourhood plan to bring buildings back into use wherever possible?
For the neighbourhood plan.
Okay, right. Thank you. Now, this is the finalist of the late application. SMD 0252. Mrs. Lydia Osvaldova. This is for 13 High Street, Biddulph. It's a change of use from the old butcher's, which was a Class E, to a hot takeaway, sui generis, serving English and Slovakian food.
Can't be changed.
Yeah. No pre-application.
Rent it.
No pre-application advice. It's the conversion of a disused vacant retail premises to a hot food takeaway, and therefore a change of use is required from Class E A, which is just display or retail sale of goods other than hot food, to sui generis, which is a general class that includes hot food takeaways for the sale of hot food where consumption of that food is mostly undertaken off the premises. Previously Class A5 for the wording of the regulations. They're proposing opening hours of 8 till 11, Monday to Saturday. On the application form, they don't put a closing time for Saturday, but I'm assuming that's an oversight as it's an 8 o'clock start, and then 9 till 10 for Sunday. It is going to provide employment for full-time employees, 4 part-time employees, 6 full-time equivalent employees. The materials, the walls are mixed tiles and painted brick front with a render to the rear. They tend to replace the tiles with render at the front, but retain the painted brick above. The roof is Staffordshire blue tiles and they retain or replace with like-for-like equivalent. The windows will retain the timber sash windows at the front, but replace the shop window and door with aluminium frame, double glazed with toughened glass, and replace the rear windows with new UPVC frames. From a design access point of view, the design retains the front step entrance with a statement that staff will assist disabled business visitors. I've put disabled in inverted commas because that's the phrase that is used rather than one we might otherwise use. And with swan neck lighting over the front signage. There was no formal supporting statement submitted, but it is the vacant former butcher's shop, and it was previously Class A1 until 2020 with ground floor storage, which is in use associated with the Class E for the first floor. It's not in the green belt. There's no BNG. It complies with neighbourhood policy HCT1 enterprise and tourism development in terms of it's a new business opening in a currently disused one. It may, however, contravene DES 1 in terms of the design. I have concerns regarding the frontage design and the accessibility. I think the new design would need to fit in. We do have specs in the NDO which would perhaps, which if they were complying with that, they wouldn't require planning permission, but they are applying for planning permission. So that's maybe a consideration we have. It may be non-compliant in that respect. However, it is providing additional employment. However, it is another takeaway on the North High Street. And I've made the somewhat flippant comment that perhaps we're creating a food and drink quarter by default in the North High Street. So I I've got two speakers in a moment. The current recommendation again would be to approve, but with or recommend approval, but with conditions. Suggesting the frontage should be compliant with the neighbourhood development order if possible, and possibly restrict the opening hours. And also to ensure that it is approved just as a hot takeaway, not of any of the other uses that would be covered by the sui generis classification. That covers a whole raft of different uses, music venues, theatres, hostels, the like. I've got three speakers, so 4 speakers now. I think Councillor Salt, you were first, then Councillor Jones, then Jackson, and then Rogers. Councillor Salt.
Aside from the fact it's another takeaway, but I don't think we've got planning grounds to refuse it. My main concern is the traditional frontage of that shop going. That frontage has got those individual little tiles. And if that goes, I will be absolutely devastated, because that's the last sort of piece of sort of 19th century kind of historic frontage. And it looks as though I can see from the designs that all those little tiles are going.
They've specifically stated that the tiles are going.
Don't want those tiles gone. I think it's an absolute outrage if those tiles disappear.
But you're happy if they replace the windows with modern secure windows and doors,
Yeah.
Tiles you would like to
The
keep.
tiles can stay. I think it's a really important feature of our ancient high street. I'll be
Okay.
devastated to see them go.
Thank you, Councillor Salt. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that's my I'd say pretty much what Councillor Salt said. I think those tiles should stay, and obviously they are butchery themed. It's got a cow's head in the tiles, but I think it could be kept and incorporated as that sort of homage to its original use. I echo what Jill said about, it's another takeaway, but at least it isn't another Chinese takeaway or another kebab house or another Indian takeaway.
Another pizza.
Something a bit different. And I think given that, even if we refuse it, given that, Domino's was approved against our wishes, I think the chances of this being rejected are weak slim. So I think we'll be urinating into the wind if we say no anyway. So I think, notwithstanding the design considerations, I think we've got to let it go through, Chair. But I think with those comments,
Thank you.
about the design of the frontage.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you for your colourful analogy.
I cleaned it up, Chair.
You did, I noticed. Thank you. That's why I'm thanking you for it rather than making other comment. Councillor Jackson, I think you put your hand up.
But somebody help me, please. I have never come across sui generis before in my life.
Okay, right.
But it was a brand.
No, I'll tell you what, it's a new classification. Basically, it's Latin and it means in a class of its own.
You didn't do Latin at middle high school when I was.
Aren't you lucky then that my grammar school taught me Latin?
All right, enlighten me.
Basically,
It means it's development on its own.
yeah, it basically means it's in a class of its own. Okay, right. So to quote for you, right. Sui generis is a Latin term that in this context means in a class of its own. So certain things are specifically defined as excluded from classification by legislation. And they become sui generis as a consequence. So theatres, amusement arcades, laundrettes, fuel stations, car showrooms, taxi businesses, scrapyards, alkali works, for heaven's sake, hostels, waste disposal installations, retail warehouse clubs, nightclubs, casinos, betting offices, payday loan shops, public houses, drinking establishments, hot food takeaways, which is the case, particular in point, venues for live music, cinemas, concert halls, bingo halls, and dance halls. They're a group classified under, these are all different things that we can't put into a single grouping.
So they put them into a big grouping because they don't fit into an existing group.
Yes.
What you're telling me, right?
Yes. If they're in things that stand on their own. Okay, right. Was that just a point of clarification then?
Glad I asked.
It was. Okay, I've got Councillor Rogers, then Smith and Yates. Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we should like to say no, it's another takeaway. We can't, unfortunately, but my concerns are extraction of fumes. As you know, I work in Southern High Street and it stinks of food time. I wouldn't like to live near to it. So what they're going to do for extraction of fumes and
I
filters?
don't believe there was actually on this. I don't think
There's nothing
I
mentioned
think
that
there
I've
was
heard so far.
specific that showed the extraction.
Is there going to be a great big extraction chimney pumping fumes out, or it's
There
not
is-
stated?
If we pull up the proposed
My concern.
elevations, I think that will show that there isn't anything as far as I can remember from looking at it. It has been.
Reservations or plans?
Well, if we look at the plans as well, but I think the plans just show you the layout. Whereas I think the elevations might show you if they're extraction chimneys.
Elevations. that
You know,
do views.
leave us what's already there.
That's my concern, Mr. Chair, the fumes, the neighbours that have to live with it.
Okay, so is that actually, I don't think it's actually showing anything extraction, is it, on the proposed? Right, okay. So looking at that, I would suggest that there isn't actually anything, any extraction on it.
So where are the cooking fumes going go?
Well, if we look at the plan, can we pull the plan up now? And then that will post plan and it will show you the locations of the different areas. So essentially, they've got two kitchen areas, a kitchen area and then a washing up kitchen behind it, which would suggest that it's not necessarily hot food.
The ovens there.
But this classification effectively covers takeaways where the food is eaten off the premises. I don't know. There is no if you want to put that in as a condition, suggest that as a condition, addition to the approval that appropriate extraction.
I'm always sensitive to people who have to live with these developments.
Right. So it's essentially we've got a further recommended condition, which is appropriate extraction.
Filtration and extraction.
Okay, filtration and extraction. Okay, so Councillor Smith, no, was it, yes, Councillor Smith and then Councillor Yates. Councillor Smith.
Just on Councillor Rogers' point, the ovens are actually in the middle part, which is in the middle of the building.
Yeah.
And actually on the wall adjoining the neighbours, so I'd imagine extraction would be quite tricky to get it all the way to the back.
Might go straight up.
Might just go straight up a chimney if there's a chimney building on the building, but I don't know if there was.
And also just that sui generis as well, that once you approve that change of use, it can go to anything within that.
That's why I was suggesting that we put a condition on that it can only be for takeaway food. No, I know that's going to disappoint Councillor Jackson, but yeah. Okay, or a payday loan shop.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Okay, Councillor Yates.
Do we really want to put a condition on to say it's only going to be a takeaway food? Because in some respects, we prefer it to be, we prefer it to be a specialty cheese shop. So we don't want to put that restriction on. Granted, I wouldn't want it to have the broad description and end up being an alkali works there or leather dyeing works or something like that, which is within that category from the list which you read off. No, I share Councillor Rogers' concerns about extraction, and I think it's a legitimate question to ask because certainly it is something which should certainly be covered within the scope of the planning framework. I also think maintaining the character of the front is absolutely critical to us supporting this, and I don't think that detracts away from a food business because at the end of the day, you know. It was a butcher's and the cow on the front, and we still eat them, so to speak, unless it's a vegetarian. But it is characterful. And the final thing is that I've seen the plan as you had before. If you can go back to the block plan, and seeing the
Elevations.
Yeah, the 3D. Certainly, the door looks. Not the one. Certainly the door looks a modern version of the original style of the door.
There is a chimney there, isn't there, as well, actually? There is a chimney at the middle section.
It's got a thing in there. So the extraction is keeping the frontage as is and cleaning that up because that's as close to heritage as we've got down that part of the high street. And I'm just wondering whether the window design, they can consult and perhaps look at some of the grants which we do with the UK Shared Prosperity, maintain the character of the high street, so to speak. So whether they've got an opportunity there to do something more in keeping with the traditional look, which doesn't require planning permission at the front to do those changes of windows if they match according to the neighbourhood development order which they plan. So I think a little bit of guidance there. But otherwise, the fact that it's a takeaway down at that end of the high street where there is parking allocated at the front, so we can pull in a park. It's completely different to the southern end where we know we have people who park on the overland lines, park on the zigzags. So I think there's a different, particular different aspect there.
Okay, thank you.
Those three caveats.
Yeah, right. Picking up on your comment about we prefer to have it as a delicatessen or cheese shop. If they were going to do that, they'd have to reapply for a change of use back to the other category. So the suggestion that we restrict the sui generis classification to just hot food rather than any of the other applications would essentially restrict it so they don't do anything perhaps we wouldn't necessarily want in that area. These are, of course, only recommendations that we could make, as Councillor Jones pointed out earlier. We are not the planning authority. So I think if I can summarise where we are then. So from a frontage point of view, we want to retain the existing tiles for historical heritage purposes.
Yeah.
We would like the front to be compliant with the neighbourhood development order designs. We want to ensure that there is appropriate filtration and extraction. Suggesting that it's restricted to hot food takeaway for the sui generis classification. There was a comment, I made a comment about restricting the opening hours, especially on Sunday. Is everyone happy with the 8 till 11 and then 9 till 10? I was concerned about 9 till 10 on a Sunday.
Can I just make a comment that the pubs and stuff are open down there and the takeaways and the residents that live in that area are used to that. So I don't see why we should restrict it because every other business down there operates till late. So
all I'm doing here is offering suggestions based upon planning policy, and therefore we are a committee. Therefore, if we're happy that
we should leave.
okay, right. So we just have the frontage retaining the tiles for historical purposes to keep the character of the building. Compliant with the neighbourhood development order for the design, the extraction and filtration, and only hot food takeaway, none of the other sui generis classification. Are we happy to recommend approval then with those conditions on the basis, as Councillor Jones says, also there's no planning reason why we should be saying no more takeaways. We've had this pointed out to us by district previously. However, and also I would acknowledge the fact that it is a different food offering than we have anywhere else in the town. So in mitigation for the fact that it's another takeaway. Have we got all that? Okay, right. So essentially, I think Jill, as you made the comment about the tiles, do you want to, is that proposal you'd like to make?
Yes.
Okay, can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Jones, can we have a show of hands for those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Right, thank you. I think that concludes the new planning application, including the supplementaries, yes? Right, okay, so that's taken care of both item 15 and item 16. So moving on to decisions received from the district council. Right, is this just one or is this? So we have 0143, single story entrance. We recommended approval. There's no comment on that as to whether it was. We don't have a decision date on that. Okay, right, fine. So it's got lost somewhere. The Rock End Stables, that was for the proposed new access parking area and extension to existing stable for agricultural storage. We recommended approval subject to non-contravention of Greenbelt, no objections from the highways and no valid neighbourhood planning concerns. SMDC have refused it on the grounds that it's inappropriate and by definition harmful to the Greenbelt, which is our concern about Greenbelt. Would lead to prominent intrusion into the countryside and being harmful to the character appearance, fail to respect the local landscape, unsustainable and not conform to the provisions of the MPPF. It's considered that the applicant is unable to overcome such principles and thus no amendments to the application were requested. So essentially, it's been refused on the grounds of effectively conservation of the Greenbelt, which I think was one of our concern at the time. So I think there's nothing there to disagree with. Finally, appeals. Do we have any appeals?
No.
No appeals. In that case, at 6:20, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you everyone for your attendance.
Yeah.
And thank you to the general public for joining us.
It's a good night for them.